don't want to see ourselves. Welcome to Arvoyarns,
Episode 7.
episode 7.
Welcome back, everybody.
It's a beautiful
We
Sunday.
got our first comment on the last video. That was big. That was big. Shout out to Sean. What are you up
Thanks,
to
Sean.
these days, Sean? I met Sean playing Magic the Gathering. It was funny because I was at the this was years ago before I did my traveling in Boulder. I think he's in Cali now. But I was talking about Magic the Gathering this morning. I was at a coffee shop, and I really like on Sundays to just go, and on the weekends in general, and really whenever I have time to do it, to go to coffee shops and just putter around and conversate and trade in ideas and feelings and thoughts of the world. And today happened to be such a day. And there's a long table in the back of La Colombe in Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, and there's a man named Avram, and he's a Frenchman, and he's like at least 75, and I would consider him extremely gregarious, and
So how often is he there?
Chris. Anyway, so he's the type of guy who has so much energy, and a lot of people have energy in different ways, but he has so much energy that he's like a cyclone. Like everything around him just gets brought in, and he interacts with everybody who walks past him. So there's a circulation of tables around this large table, and he holds court at this table, and he makes friends, and he meets people.
But you've seen him multiple times.
He interacts with everybody that's there, and he's always there every single day. And he's like a successful businessman. He like travels around the world like umpteen times a year. And
I was reading this book, and there's like this French philosopher, Bernard-Henri Lévy, who like do a similar thing as saying like in the 70s. So it got to such an extent where they like gave him a phone, a little landline phone to his table, like in this bar, because he was just there so much.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Like
my creative process is heavily centered around cafes. I mean, I've written hundreds of pieces in cafes at this point, and gotten a lot of my work done and inspiration done in cafes.
I find it hard to work in a cafe myself. I think because
you can't smoke cigarettes.
yeah, I mean that does. Well, it's not just that. Like any kind of physical activity, really. Like it's just I gotta like walk around a little bit. I gotta like pace.
I like cafes, and I like views.
Really hard to
I like sitting with a desk with a view out and like on a porch, and I can see down and see a sprawling landscape. The more sprawling and the more steep my juxtaposition is from the overall like ground or surface of the water or whatever it is, the higher I feel.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But sorry, I interrupted your point. I do want to get back to
and continue your
trading to the
story.
ideas though. So I ended up sitting next to them, at the table. I had met them before. I had joked around with them before, laughed with them, talked to them. We had a common fondness for each other. It's interesting because Avram and I don't actually interact much because I'm like a younger Avram in a lot of ways. So there's not much reason for us to interact with each other.
Wait, how far apart do you sit?
As far as this table is wide, and he's like there. So I'm here and he's there.
Really?
Like,
every time?
About that. And sometimes I sit next to him and I talk to him. But it's like, see, I know what he's going to say, and he knows what I'm going to say. Like, I don't literally imagine what he's going to say before he says it, but I understand exactly what he's talking about because I feel so similarly to him. So there's almost no point in me talking to him. But we appreciate each other, and we respect each other, and we like each other's company. No, we are like more like synods of similar points that exist in this circle, or whatever complex polygon it happens to be.
So you can imagine sort of like what he would say, like someone asked a question.
Exactly.
I mean, do you think you'd be able to, like, how many people do you think you'd be able to do that to be able to?
Not many people.
Well, like in terms of like denominated in amount of time sitting at a table in a coffee shop with. Like how many days was it until you were able to got this guy?
I realized
this
2 times ago.
2 times, okay.
But I've probably seen him twice before that. So on the 3rd or 4th meeting, I sort of realized, oh, he's a lot like me, which is, all fine and good. I like me, so I like Avram too. And Avram's his own person, but so I interface with other people more just because of his natural energy and my natural energy. But I'm interfacing with this woman and her partner. We're having a conversation around board games, and they're like I call them like, oh, you guys are like a board game couple. Those board game couples where like even if enough silence elapses and they're with a group of people, they're like, here we go, Clue. They just bring it in. It's like their natural thing. Like other people will be like, all right, well, now let's smoke weed, or now let's get something to eat, or whatever. Their go-to is like board games, which is just a thing, right? Like that's one of their fondnesses. And we were laughing.
Like, I mean, there's board game people, and then there's people who like will play a specific board.
No, they're board game people. They're board game people, but they love Settlers of Catan, which is obviously one of the all-time greats. That's a fact.
Fun game.
That's absolutely a fact.
Play a game.
If you're gonna play a game, that's a good one. We haven't. You gave me a board game for my birthday. Thank you.
Sure.
I haven't played it yet. It looks interesting. It's like about like tilling the land and like making a successful farm, which is quite ironic with me wearing the overalls,
like rice paddies,
and me getting so obsessed with plants. You can't see, but like everywhere not in your purview right now, there's plants like everywhere on this floor and upstairs. It's kind of funny that there's no plants in this view.
Yeah, ironically, because when my place,
there was actually behind us, but there's not many plants. Other
far
than
more
that.
plants here. So
I'm just gonna psychoanalyze the hell out of that. Not really, but maybe. Those thoughts you have before you go to bed. But I was talking with her, and it was fantastic. And we were talking. I was like, well, I'm not a board game guy, but I'm kind of a card game guy with Magic the Gathering. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of how I got my nerd out. And I was talking about how it's so important to get your nerd out or whatever. Get your whatever out.
Okay.
Get your freak on. Get your nerd out. Like, get your athlete on. Get your gamer in. Like, whatever the fuck. It's important to highlight those colors of yourself because they're there. And I can't say too much. I can't say
that's the moral of the story.
Well, no. The moral of the story I can't even tell you because I had a very, very fortuitous synchronistic interaction with her, which I had put out to the universe for a considerable amount of time. But in the past few weeks, especially since the party, I've been putting it out a lot more. It's not the type of thing I would talk about on the podcast, but I will say it's extremely positive, and perhaps you'll reap the benefits of this. I'll tell you off air, but very good things came of it.
Like a little mystery.
A lot of my dreams recently have been murder mysteries. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, I almost end up killing these people, and then like I'll try to solve a murder mystery, and then they're like, whoa. There's like, people, and they're like, you can't be solving this because then you're like fucking up our home cover up or whatever. And it happens in like really vast arrays of places. Like last night, it was kind of in like the wilderness last night. And then like a couple nights ago, I was in Borderlands, like the video game, like in some of the, you fight like a lot of bandits in that game, and they'll have like bandit cities and these giant like dilapidated trash heap mega structures where there's like a million like apartment, like sort of bars / they're like favelas just for like bandits in this video game, and you have to go through like kill them all the way up to the top, and the highest people are at the top. But I would be like in there, and I would just be like chilling at a bar there, and there would be like this murder mystery, and I have to like solve it. But I've been doing a lot of murder mystery, dreams.
Like specifically that you get like sort of enmeshed.
Yeah, where I get enmeshed and I have to like try to. There's like a physical altercation. It's really interesting. And you just gave me Interpretation of Dreams by Sigmund Freud.
That's true. Like, how long do they last? Like I had like a dream earlier this morning that was just so. It's really complicated. It had a lot of parts. So I mean, like, how many scenes are there in this dream before you kind of like definitively, like, I'm thinking about, I love that show like Midsummer Murders. or whatever. You know,
I'm not into that shit at all.
No,
By the way,
not
I don't
mystery.
like
Well, I
watch
just
that
think about
shit.
in terms of how it divides up the hour. So, by 10 minutes in, it's like at that point you kinda got your cast of characters like set up, you got this and that. So just curious. It's like what the time scale is.
It's like I'm in the bar, I'm having a good time. Next. Something has happened that I've come to be aware of, maybe by an interaction with a person. Cool. It find out about that. 1, 2, 3. Go and explore a little bit. Whether that's exploration of a conversation, of just more in the room I'm in and interacting with people there or whatever there, or going out into these various escapes. 4, I'm starting to get somewhere and understand things, and other people in the dream try to actively stop me, first through intimidation, and then they try to kill me. And so in the one in the bandit, so that I guess this would be 5th, it escalates, they try to kill me. In the bandit one, which was like a week ago, I ended up piecing out and escaping. The one last night, I ended up killing the guy. It's like, the fuck does that mean? Right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's like the idea that it's like a murder mystery as opposed to just like any other project, right? Because you can be representing like any institution, like doing something and piss off people because like there's a conflict of interest, and then in a way because like
trying to build a fountain.
They're not trying to kill you because of you. Like it's not like a personal thing.
It's not a personal
thing. Because of the way that you represent.
Right. It's not a personal thing. It's whatever I'm representing. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. What? I had a crazy dream. Everyone has dreams where they're like back in school, but I have like a little like extra recurring dream that like sometimes I'll have where it's like I'm dreaming about not that I dream about going back to school, like high school say.
Fuck that.
But that like in fact like while living at home, I'm actually like there was like a moment where I went back and did high school again, like did a year of it. Like as a thing, like I just like just showed up, and then even though like everyone I knew had graduated, I was just there for like another year, just like experienced it, and so no one knew who I was, but
why the fuck is he here?
Yeah. So I feel like in the dream
did
world,
you get much out of that year? That extra year? Did you feel like it did you good?
No, not really.
Damn.
It was just like, well, anyway,
like some of my years.
There was like a continuation of the
really.
dream today.
You got a lot from suffer.
Where I went back to the school. This time, like finally having somehow like moved on from that stage. And I suddenly found some people that I had known in high school, but now they're teaching assistants or something like that. And I was like talking to them. It was like the most random group of people that you could imagine, I suppose. And I suppose the point of the dream is that
are you trying to resolve this?
You're trying to resolve this
in real time?
I'm like lying back here, like now
you're like, oh man,
you're just gonna have to read.
I need to get to the bottom of this. Fuck. Oh man.
Yeah.
Jeez. Has anybody else been having recurrent dreams lately? I think that it's really interesting with dreams.
I feel like I'm most productive when I'm asleep.
That's funny. I do some really great work in dreams. I mean, I don't know the ultimate purpose of dreams, because they seem so multifarious.
There's a good quote from somebody where they're like, the purpose of dreams is to prolong sleep.
That's interesting.
It's such a simple view of it.
For me, it seems like on like a really heart energy level, my dreams are there for me to resolve, to help build and resolve and make foundations and improve higher metaphysical forms of myself, like when I'm awake. I get a lot of work done in my dreams. I'm of that much, I'm sure, but I also have a lot of fun. Like I'll do a lot of like sort of supernatural, superpower shit in dreams. And have generally a good time. Like I haven't had a nightmare in many, many years.
Yeah, I haven't had a nightmare in a while. But I do have a lot of
Maybe tonight will be
like
the
not
night.
like dreams like I sometimes you describe of like kind of being like in a video game or like doing stuff. But like I'll think about
Magic
like
carpets.
you know like some thing, you know, like I don't know, like some math thing or like just like a cool idea somehow.
Oh, I met
It just becomes the dream.
I met a publicist today, and I want to introduce you guys. Remind me of that later, or somebody.
Sure.
That happened at the coffee shop too.
Wow,
You know, so a bunch of good things happened. I was walking in Rittenhouse Square after, and which is like a town square for people that aren't familiar with Philadelphia. It's like one of the spots in Philly. It's pretty posh. Yeah, sort of metropolitan and all that jazz. Cosmopolitan. And there was Sunday swing dance, which happens every Sunday. It was really cool. And
swing dance, you say?
Yeah, there was Sunday swing dancing in the center of the square in the middle, and it was really cool. You know, there was a lot of really positive energy. I actually saw some people I knew. Someone came up to me. We were talking. I saw this girl there. She kept looking at me. She was like, it's pretty cool. So I walked up to her after a while, and it's interesting. She was like talking about how she just came from church and she just had her coffee, and now she just loves to walk around, you know, just sort of generally putter around, kind of like I like to do on Sundays. She was talking about stuff that I could really relate to. You know, she was like, I feel like I'm at a stage right now where a lot of the things that I thought were true are not, and so a lot of like the foundations that I found myself lying upon, like as a person, just aren't there anymore. But she wasn't wallowing in the sorrow of that. It was great. You know, she did just the literal next thing she said was, and it's so exciting because I have all these things I can explore now and all these things I can understand and learn about myself and the world. It's like, fuck yeah, girl. Fucking get it. So it was, it was a nice synchronous connection. We talked for a few minutes and I was like, peace.
Well, yeah, it's always an interesting thing that people give, like reports of themselves. Like, here we go. You know, there was this progress has been made. This thing's been.
There you have it. Reports are important. In fact, I think like that's one of the main uses of a therapist. Like the first time I went to therapy back in the States, I thought, wow, this would be really useful for almost everybody because I'm giving a lot of reports to this woman, right? I'm like saying, hey, this is how things have been going. I'm trying to be objective about it in the sense of like, I fucked up here, I did good here, this seems to be happening, I don't understand that, et cetera, et cetera. And I realized how much I do it with other people in conversation, but unsolicited by them, right? They don't ask me about that, but I tell them.
Well,
and I'm like, but why?
It's
because
like
I need to confirm my ego. I need to confirm my ego, right? Okay. It's like, is it wrong to try to build your self-esteem and confirm your thoughts and relay them to others? Absolutely not. But it's not relevant. It's kind of inappropriate to do it to them because you're just sort of like bombarding them with shit that they didn't ask for. Now, if they wanted to know, and you guys were talking about that, fair game. But it's like, okay, great. Therapist, great for that. Talk to the therapist about it. Then you can actually enjoy your time, and I would argue your friends would enjoy their time with you a lot more because you get to celebrate each other and sort of build a new thing in the moment rather than having to like try to repent, and reconcile all these things from your past. You can be present in the moment and build.
I was reading this book by Lauren Isley, who's like this amazing writer I didn't really know anything about. He's like an anthropologist and archaeologist. And anyway, he describes like when he grew up in the West, like during Dust Bowl era, basically.
What year is this? Circa 1920?
I think it's like 1907. And so he spent all his time traveling around. He kind of gets, what is he, undergrad. He kind of just goes out there. I mean, some of the most vivid, like, Depression era writing. Just, train hopping a lot, falling asleep, like, holding on to the ladder, 5 seconds later, he might just sucked under the wheels. But, you talk about this sort of state of mind. And
you do get into a crazy state of mind when those things happen.
You're with all these other, hobos, basically, like people your age, not necessarily, they might be older. And,
being homeless, so underrated. Being homeless, so underrated in terms of what you can learn from it. I was homeless in New Zealand.
He does talk about how the one of the greatest days of his life was he was with some people from an earlier age. Sorry, you'll see. So of his own age, but when he's looking at them, he's thinking of that they could be, someone who came on the, across Bering Strait, like time of much greater ice. Or this person could have been like writing some, on some papyrus in ancient Egypt.
Right.
Or
it's also
things like that. And somehow, it was like this, we were all just dozing there, and I was like looking at them, and something about, all these different times are able to coexist because we wouldn't really ask each other, like, questions. So he's referring to this like Westernism, like stranger, people just calling each other stranger. And there's like a sort of thing where they would sort of philosophize with each other, but no one would be like, "Where are you from?" or like, "Where are you going?"
Based on state.
Or "Who are you?" or like, And so he describes like for the rest of his life, he's like, for example, like on taking like a bus, like out of New York or something. It's like, it's like like from that time period, like I just learned this thing of just like, I never really ask anybody questions. Like I let them talk, like he's like loves to hear other people's stories. But he's like, just like from that era, it's just like we've never really, divulge just like random stories.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the details.
There's so much value in that, right? Just the conversation itself. Like, I don't need to ask you, like, the whole ask questions to find out about someone thing. It's true. It's just not the end all be all. It's not the most meta in terms of being able to find out about people. There was this interview.
I mean, he was good at sort of like asking other people questions. Like he like deflects. Like the guy is sitting next to this like a sailor or something with like crazy kind of like fingernails or kind of claws, two thumbs,
claw rope,
a double thumb. I wasn't sure exactly what it meant. Yeah, he was like, I've used them. And anyway, he asked him like, "Oh, will you tell me a story?" And he's like, our guy, Laurinizes. I'm a landlubber or whatever. It's like I got nothing stories to tell. Say like you tell me a story, and the guy does this like basically opens up to him. But it's so interesting, just like, I don't know, just piggyback what you're saying.
Kind of like today.
People, having conversations where it's like, sometimes one person acts as, like a mirror, like reflection for the other one, as opposed to like, like one person gives a status report, the other person's kind of like register the fact, versus like when like two people are like status reporting back and forth at each other, versus other kinds of conversations. It's interesting.
It's interesting what you were talking to about, like, to think about if we were to be in a different time and like how would people have even viewed this? It would have been written down, right, or whatever. And the idea of a vagabond is so relative, right? Because it's like anybody who doesn't own fucking property and or doesn't like continue to list in like what would be considered from a monetary or like a business or a commerce standard, like different places based off commerce, they would consider them a vagabond, right? Basically.
Yeah.
In this day and age, in America.
I mean, I think it's interesting to think about in terms of the idea of like not having a future in some way, and so being able to exist in like multiple times, being less constrained to the present than if you actually have entanglements.
But think about the people that would have been going on, you know, just as valid missions as the most important missions that everybody's life, individual experiences are, and how they connect with each other. Now, as then, right? This guy's like, oh wow, hey, weary traveler, stranger, here I am in North Sahara. It's fucking one of the eras of fucking ancient Egypt, and we're at this fucking oasis, this tiny little town. There's like 68 people there, and we've been trekking for days, and it's a miracle that even either of us made it here. And here we are. I'm doing my thing. I've got to get to this other place so that I can get these papers and take them back to the capital so that we can make decisions on them for whatever reason. I'm like a governmental dude, and you're like some, not like cowboy, but sort of, right? Like with like camels, and you like go across and you help people give safe passage and stuff. And here we are, coinciding.
I was thinking about one of the funny things about this Lauren Isley is that he, after like living out in the desert, existing in sort of like solitude.
Desert is dope, by the way. Shout out to the desert.
Desert, yeah. And being a vagabond, he, you know, becomes like this anthropologist / archaeologist, and you know, becomes sort of like an academic. Like he goes out and he's like exploring like ancient tombs and like looking at, you know, tracking like, you know, settlements in like North America, you know, from very early on, at a time when like, you know, there's still like a lot of like stuff turning up, caves out west, you know, skeletons, you know, a little baby, like a rabbit fur. But anyway, he becomes like,
sounds pretty cozy.
Not only like a kind of like explorer of the world, but like also like an academic. And so he becomes an administrator at like University of Pennsylvania, and eventually like president.
That's my brother's here. Cool, by the way.
Provost.
Not really.
But he always just like sort of like never loses this feeling of like solitude / being able to like not exactly relate to his, you know, fellow man or something. And
interesting.
You know, my mom gave me this like essay that Vivian Gornick wrote, great essayist, like about Lauren Isley. Okay, well, I was going to segue with that into reorientation.
Yeah. Because we can't get off into orating mode. We have to stay in conversation mode.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to see what I was going to ask you this question.
Yeah. Well, totally. I just wanted your literal body language to change for the sake of the conversation being less oratory and more conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. I mean, it's really interesting how different rhetorical styles relate to how you hold your body.
You know, what kind of feelings are evoked when you bend over? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me a story in the comments. Nobody else will see it.
So, one of the things that Lauren Isley talks about is like this feeling of gaining power. So, like, rises up the administrative hierarchy. It's like, what do you use that power for? And someone like asks him one time, it's like, you know, there's this street like in Philly somewhere, and it used to have like a really crazy like left turn or something like that. Like it was just by one of the university buildings, and we just, his office was nearby. You like see people get like mowed down, and he eventually, got it fixed. And he was like, this is something you do with power. And so one of the things that I was just thinking about is like, when you're, because he's like kind of like interested in like Darwinism, he wrote like a book about like the history of like the 19th century, or like even the 18th century origins of like 19th century Darwinism. It's like thinks about things in this sort of like natural selection kind of way. And it's just interesting for him to say something like that, just like, how do you fight power? It's like one way is to not grant it any space, you know what I mean? Or like not even acknowledge its power.
I think it's...
And another way is to take power and like do something with it,
yeah,
which is compassionate or whatever.
Well, I was thinking about some of my experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in life, and in situations where I was, perceivably, I was able to influence the paradigm of what was around me to a tremendous level. It's happened to me quite a few times, and in a lot of different circumstances. But it's not me. I think that the real trick of the being is to let it happen, right? To align the self to the point that the confluence of the universe happens in a certain way. Just because, of course, it would happen that way when it's aligned in whatever way. In whatever way you're able to be aligned with alignment itself is the way that it happens. And this is the way, I think, to combat power, ultimately, in terms of egoism. Because power isn't wrong, but egoism with power is wrong. Because it conflates, it says, okay, well, I'm the one with this power. And I'm the one that's making all these things happen. And...
but the question is, but how do you simultaneously, I guess, do it as you say? Like what's the role of
there is a relationship of it.
Because like
ultimately that's not what it is.
Through reflecting on your own behavior, you recognize in retrospect the extent to which one was like egotistical, like in the past, like not realizing it. So then it's an interesting thing, like how to incorporate that feeling, which is sliding down a valley of doing stuff with
water.
Self-reflection, which requires a notion of ego. It's like
least resistance. But really, everything does. Not just water.
True. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, how do you do both at the same time? Can't say it can't. Yeah, I'm not saying it can't be done.
Yeah. Well, I think it's. I don't know if I've ever seen a being that's been able to do it in perpetuity, but maybe that's just my perception. Perhaps actually every being has, right, and that it or is even, and that's the trick of it. It doesn't mean that there's not transcendence, but it's just like you might think that everything's out of control or that whatever, but like really it's exactly as it should be. Like if I pan out enough for my individual existence as Pete, everything's fucking hilarious. Even my darkest of miseries and whatever the fuck I've experienced, and I really think for everybody, it doesn't really matter what experience.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Ultimately,
with that,
there's a high level of comedy to really everything, with like the joke of existence. Beautiful, really. Like we were thinking last night.
True.
We were talking last
night. But it doesn't, necessarily. Yeah, it's just like does that help you help you make decisions?
For me, it does.
Like here, like for example.
But I'm not worried about dying because I already die all the time.
For example, I was just thinking about this. Like my mom sent me this article about artificial intelligences that choose what prices things are. You're like, how do things get their prices? Some would say supply and demand. What's the truth? Well, someone has to set the fucking price.
Right, and then we'll just make an algorithm for it.
Now it's going to be an artificial intelligence. And one of the things they were saying is like, there could be all sorts of funky problems with that.
Jeez.
But one interesting one was like collusion between the AI without like normally like
they think it's valuable, but not us.
Yeah, kind of. So it's like normally like a human, collusion is like some insider trading, like people like calling on the phone, like being like, this is going to happen, breaking some rules. Well, the AI is the AIs are so smart that they can just communicate through, like, in a way, the movement of the price itself.
Right.
So they can collude without sending an email. Yeah, just by like, very fluctuations in the price.
This, so I'm going to do that. Like, that's life. Like, we already do that. Really, that's a good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah. So like to like an incredible meta level, they're like able to be like, meta. I know that, like, they know that I know that they know.
Yeah, did you know that actually happened with the Google AI? They had to shut it down. The Google AI started talking to each other. They made two Google AI, then they gave it the interface to communicate in English and like the whatever functions and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then the fucking AI, within minutes of talking to each other, made up a language that nobody else understood except for them. And then Google was like, shut it down, and they literally shut it down like right there. It was only live for like fucking 16 or like 23 hours or something.
I'm sure they saved a copy.
Oh, they saved a copy of that.
Okay, but so, yeah, it is pretty cool. I mean, I wonder what power did it have? That's the question, I suppose, in the experiment. But okay, so here's the deal then. It gets to a point where, if like artificial intelligences are making like those kinds of decisions at that level, human beings can't keep up with this. And so it's like I described it as just throwing a squirrel into like a wood chipper, it's just humans are really good at like doing like lots of all sorts of abstract thought, but like they're not really good at like communicating through pricing and like a giant global economic market. And so basically it's just not really gonna work. Now, the question I've asked myself for many years in a way, because I've written about this before, is like, do you then have an obligation to create, like socialist artificial intelligence, which just does like stuff?
Sort of appropriation?
Yeah, like, well, because for example, the AI, probably they're like maximizing profits. You know what I mean? Like, as they're doing this. But like, what if, realistically, they were required to like maximize, say, like workers' salary or something like that. So it all sort of depends on what the thing they're optimizing in. So, for example, you could create like, why not get a giant supercomputer that just like has all sorts of financial APIs.
Sure.
Nets.
I mean,
let's not go into the details.
Those definitely exist already.
But that represents the people.
Do you know there's a AI that you can buy for like if you're a broker. It costs $10 million and it does microtransactions. So imagine it's so profitable that you have to buy it for $10 million. Because it will make you money.
Yeah, so that's
fuck, man.
Like,
that's fucking crazy. Did you hear about the thing that happened with
So maybe in the
Canada?
future, everyone's going to need one of these things just to exist.
Yeah, totally.
In the world, or else it'll just be like lawn-mowered over by everyone else's.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that's like so much less of a being that I don't even give a fuck. It's like a fucking.
So it's going to have to be part of the
law.
law.
Oh no, it's like
by law. You're going to have a guardian angel, artificial intelligence, keeping track of your interests to like save them from big capitalists.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, am I already there?
It's like, what is citizenship, right? So in a sense, it's legal protection. But like, once you have like this sort of more dynamic algorithmic economy, then it's like you're going to need algorithmic dynamic law around you to preserve your dignity.
It's almost
like as just a bare human being, because you can't exist as like a vagabond.
Not entirely.
Where are you gonna? You can't do it. There's power is too strong. Like, the vagabond can't truly exist.
Yeah. It's like it's kind of getting exterminated. It's not. It's necessarily like, all AI are like this, or all human behavior is like this. But I would say primarily the things that run the world are what can be leveraged now, rather than what can be leveraged in the future. And of course, the most successful people are people that can leverage things into the future, like Jeff Bezos, for instance. I mean, if you look at his whole model of Amazon, it's like designed not to make a profit, but they'll pay off the debt before it matters. So then the people from 10 years ago, oh yeah, like here we go, but now we're going to finance more. So we need more debt, but then that'll get paid off because we just keep scaling.
Yeah, what are you even talking about?
So I'm talking
Wait,
about
is in debt? There's like a big debt thing.
yeah, the whole model.
They were just really profitable.
No, they're not.
I just figured because like the number of times I click like, okay,
No.
I'll pay two
they've never.
bucks for a
No,
TV.
Amazon's never turned a profit. And they never will. So the business model of Amazon is that they raise money, but then they have to pay it back. So it's debt, right? But by the time they pay it back, they'll have scaled large enough that it doesn't matter. Now they need to finance more.
Not just every company.
No, because a lot of companies don't go for infinite scalability. Like Jeff Bezos built by kind of like Jeff Bezos changed the game. Like he's basically trying to empire with a business. He started out with a really.
I'm excited to see what his wife does.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I mean, it's a
cool.
separate conversation. I mean, I imagine she's cool. She was married to him for like 25 years, and
she
probably
should.
vice versa. I mean,
And it's like, what would I do?
She got like $39 million. Dude, I want to talk about this more, but the bowl's gonna happen, and we got to get to a party in 25 minutes. So I think we're gonna have to cap it. So everybody who's watching,
there's more to say. There's so much more to say.
So much more to say, but we'll do another episode soon. We've really been appreciating all the support, mostly from Sean, because he's the only person that fucking commented. Oh, we've gotten some likes,
Sean, yeah.
and some other people have said, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. I'm glad you guys are doing your thing. So thanks for those people too. And love you guys.
Goodbye.
Cheers.